Blessings. Welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. We're in Numbers chapters 22 through 24, and these three chapters have a very interesting character that we're going to explore a little bit about today. And if you've read ahead, you've seen what Balaam does, what's requested of him, how he reacts to these requests, and how this chapter 24, how his story in this part of Numbers ends. And it ends well. So we see Balaam, and we don't know who he is. He doesn't appear to be a Hebrew or an Israelite or anything connected with the Jewish people or the Hebrews as they're wandering in the desert. But the king of Moab knows him and knows that he has some power to curse or bless, and how he knows that, from history, whatever their history together, I don't know. But if you look at Balaam and you think, my gosh, how did this guy get this such a great relationship with God, that God has allowed him to have some power to be able to do some things that are supernatural. And it just makes me realize, and I hope it makes you realize, that God's not just working in the Middle East. And I'm talking about this particular time in history. God's working all over the world. And we saw it when Abraham was doing all his travels, and he comes up and meets this guy, Melchizedek. And Melchizedek was a priest of God. We read the book of Job, and nowhere in there does Job seem to be an Israelite or a Hebrew or part of any of this nation. But there are people all over the world who know God and have a relationship with him, and not just the ones that we concentrate on the Bible. So keep your mind open to realize that God's working everywhere, not just with the Israelites here, although their stories are incredibly important or they wouldn't be in the Bible. So anyway, we'll move on with Balaam. Balaam's, what an interesting story. He's asked by the king of Moab and the Moabites to curse the Israelites because they want to go down and they want to kill them. They want to get rid of them because they're afraid of them. They're scared they're going to try and take over their land. But Balaam keeps asking God, and God says, no, you're not gonna curse them. There's a little insert where Balaam is riding his donkey and the donkey talks to him. Man, that's an incredible story. If you haven't read it, please read up on that. But in chapter 22, verse 9, God asks Balaam a question. And you probably know where I'm going with this, because we've seen a couple of places where God will say, take a census, or, hey, Adam, where are you in the garden? God will ask questions, not because God doesn't already know the answer to the questions. He's asking the question so that the person that he's asking it of will stop and think about the question and recognize where he is spiritually. When he asked Balaam this question, he said, Balaam, who are these men with you? Well, they're the enemies of your people. That should have clued Balaam in that God was not really pleased with the company that he was keeping here. But Balaam does what God tells him to, and he does not curse the Israelites. And so we get to the end of 24, man, and things end well, right? Not exactly. What we don't read, and we're going to pick up a lot more on this tomorrow, Balaam doesn't stop there. Balaam's story continues, because in here today we see that the king offered him a ton of treasure and money to do what the king asks, and he says no. It makes you wonder, as we get into tomorrow, if Balaam doesn't start changing his mind and go, it really would be nice to have all that extra money, or this position of power. So basically, today's a good story. Balaam does the right thing, but he keeps some really bad company. And just like we talked about yesterday, bad company corrupts good character. Balaam finishes really well here, and if he could have continued in this way, or just said, you know what, I'm going to live with the Israelites. They're God's people, and he's my God. That's where I need to be. Things could have ended well there, but I don't want to spoil tomorrow's, because it's a good story too. Anyway, tomorrow we're in Numbers 25 and 26. Read ahead. Good stuff. And if you didn't read today's, go back and read today's. Good story. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and be safe.